Edwards-Allbaugh from the Tax Ladies, Antwon Brinson from Culinary Concepts AB, Allison Linney from Allison Partners is here, and then we'll also have Yolunda Harrell from New Hill Development Corporation, who will be giving us updates.
You forgot who it was.
The feedback. It's now, I didn't forget who you are, sweetheart. I'm just fighting this feedback. I'm hearing my voice as I'm talking to you guys, so it's really throwing me off. But the agenda is going to be, we're going to talk about announcements. The panelists are going to share their experiences on how they made it through the final, not the final, but the previous crisis, and how people are pivoting during this crisis. And then we're going to also share updates on how the access to capital and all the whirlwind of all these different grants and loans and things are really panning out in the current environment, as well as sharing the do's and don'ts on how these things are panning out and what you should be doing, how you should be preparing, how you should be planning. So very excited about this session. Really hope that you guys will glean a lot of knowledge, a lot of perspective from this session, because perspective is the main goal, and it's really what can change your life in a situation like this. So as we continue to move forward, we encourage you all to answer the question of the day that Andrea posted as we get in and talk about what we need to talk about today. But before we get going, I want to share our mission, the definition of what minority is and what we move on as an alliance, and then move forward. The purpose of the Minority Business Alliance, which is our mission, is to convene and support and promote minority business professionals, leveraging local business and nonprofit partners to expand community wealth building. And our definition of minority is a business that includes an individual with at least 51% ownership by U.S. citizens or legal resident aliens who are African American, Asian American, Hispanic American, or Native American. And we glean our definition from the Virginia Department of Small Business and Supplier Diversity. So without further ado, I would love to just dive right in. As we go through, I encourage you once again is just share your comments, share your perspective on the question of what resilient efforts have you been practicing that the group could utilize. And as we go on and move with the panelists, we'll try to incorporate your insights as well. So we'll start off with Libby. We'll move to Antwon with Culinary Concepts, and then we'll close with Allison Linney on the panelists. So Libby, if you would just start and just talk about how you survived and how you made these new moves during the 2008 financial crisis. How did you thrive and come around? Are you there? I think Libby might have taken a break. So what we'll do, we'll move on to Antwon from Culinary Concepts AB, and just share with the group how you're pivoting currently right now with the pandemic, with all the turmoil that's been going on in the economic landscape.
What's up, everybody? So, I mean, for us here, most of our classes are done. They've been done in the kitchen. And from conception, one of the things that I wanted to do was transition to an online platform. And I've always been in conversation with different organizations nationally and internationally, but as many small businesses, getting in that door to sit at the table and have these conversations with some of the larger organizations, it's a bit difficult, especially when you're first or second year business. For us at Culinary Concepts, this pandemic has been an opportunity to sit at the tables with some of the larger organizations such as James Beard, such as American Hotel and Lodging, and American Culinary Federation, and have conversations about the possibilities of what a new future will look like in the hospitality industry. I mean, as you know, restaurants and food service establishments all around the world are suffering right now. And it's small businesses like Culinary Concepts and like you all that, you know, you're on the forefront of doing something, and you have ideas that are fresh, that are new, that a lot of these organizations don't have, you know. And what I found is that, you know, when you have these larger organizations, it's almost like the Titanic. It's a really hard ship to turn, and they're rigid in their ways. And they're looking at creative ways and having conversations with, you know, the small guys in the pond about possibilities. And for me, it's been a blessing in disguise to, you know, right now we're looking at some very large partnerships nationally in the wake of this, when this thing is all over. The online platform is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I've used my time wisely the last 2 weeks. I've just, as Miss Yolunda would say, YouTube University, going to school. And, you know, I built out an online platform. You know, I'll be done with it by tomorrow, and I'll be able to run some tests, and we'll start doing online classes here through our organization. So, I mean, it's I think Quentin said it the best. You know, it's all in a matter of perspective. You know, if you look at this as, you know, for me, that's what it'll be. But if you look at this as an opportunity and use your expertise, all of us are expertise in different areas, and we all have a unique skill to bring to the table. And some of us, you know, we're always learning, and we have these skill sets that we don't even see as valuable. But this is the time to use those individual skill sets. You know, something like, for me, you know, I love coding, but I never really did anything with it, and I never really dived into it. And over the last few weeks, I took the time to kind of brush up and dive into it, and I built out a website. So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities out there with larger organizations, but there's also opportunities with smaller organizations. Something we did on our social media platform, you know, looking at some of the nonprofits that we're handing out, you know, food in the community. What I found is that a lot of folks didn't know how to cook that food. So we posted a challenge. You know, this is a dish that you can make with food out of your pantry. And, you know, to create engagement, to create positive energy, and to kind of take people's mind off of, you know, everything that's going on around us. I've been also talking with a lot of the nonprofits in the area that are looking to give food into with different establishments, and just kind of helping them carve out plans, organization, and structure, creating process and procedure. And the final thing that I'm working on is working with, there's a lot of small businesses out there right now that, you know, they hit the ground running. You know, they have good ideas, good concepts, but again, foundationally, they don't have their food costs, their labor costs, and that stuff locked down. So I've been spending some energy right now I'm working with 2 different organizations on helping them set foundation and build some of those skills, so when they come out of this, they can be stronger than they were before we went into it. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you for sharing, Antwon. I appreciate it, man.
You're welcome.
A ball of energy and a great example in this community. That's why we have you on this call as well, man. Because of immediate action and being nimble of foot is very important for entrepreneurs. And there's always an opportunity to take advantage of any opportunity, because entrepreneurship is about creating solutions to problems, right? So before we move to Libby, what I'll do is share a few of the comments regarding the question of the day. Yolunda shared that she's been participating in online training to create a new revenue stream in our existing businesses. Yes, indeed. I've also been talking with organizations in other states to learn about a variety. Yeah.
May I respectfully suggest that we have someone else read them? The feedback is really rough. I think it may be worse for some of us than others.
Oh, okay.
But it is awful.
So Andrea, would you share?
I'm sorry, so sorry, but for me, it's almost unintelligible. I can't almost hear you.
Oh man. Okay. Thank you for stopping me. Thank you.
It's hard to do in this
We were just trying to endure it. Bless his heart.
I mean,
Bless his
it's too
heart.
hard for me. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Forgive
so
me.
so Q started to read this one. Yolunda Harrell said, participating in online training to create a new revenue stream in our existing businesses. She's also been talking with organizations in other states to learn about a variety of grants that could be shared with others. Are you all getting an echo from me too?
Oh, you're good.
Okay, then it's just me. All right, Aileen Jackson-Diggs from says she is collecting data. She is the placement counselor in Harrisonburg DARS, and their chamber members are not actively aware of any resources for local minority businesses. So we're glad we can be a resource for her. Let's see. Elliot Cisneros said his nonprofit has had good fortune in developing work, diversity and equity online over the last couple of years. So he's in more demand. And I'll read one more. Paula is staying in contact with clients and being curious in how they are taking care of themselves. Self-care is important. You know, we talk about the business, but mentally, emotionally, and physically, this can be draining on people. Also taking time to learn more and do research in the field, passing new info on to clients and others. So thank you all for sharing those comments.
How do I sound right now? Still rough?
Same.
Same. I think we just let Libby go. Is that okay?
So please move to, let's go to Libby.
Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I stepped out for a minute. Q was talking, and that's about the shortest that I've ever heard him give a startup of a meeting. So I thought I had a little bit of time to sneak in and sneak out. So I do apologize. So it's really interesting from my perspective, because I've got a couple of things going on. I have to take care of my in-house situation, but I also work with small businesses. So I'm helping them take care of their in-house situation as well. So it kind of creates a little bit more chaos around here as far as for ourselves getting through this situation. Just kind of being hyper aware of what's going on, doing the research, following everything that's going on as far as initiatives, evolving ourselves as far as technology to be able to recreate what we do and to be able to do pretty much everything that we do in a virtual environment as opposed to in an in-person environment has been really important. I went through this business after 9/11, and it was completely a different situation from this situation, because although that was a national emergency and a catastrophe, it was so far away. The economic impact was so completely different, and it just wasn't hitting people in their pockets and at home the way that this situation has. I really worked very hard with clients to encourage them, well, first of all, about emergency preparedness. Hopefully nothing like this will ever happen again, but just kind of working with getting yourself in a situation to be able to weather this kind of any sort of emergency situation that could put you out of business, looking at the different resources available to work through these sort of crises that you can have as a business owner, and just different models of, you know, how I can still stay in business through a situation like this. I had one client that was a food truck, and we kind of talked, and also I've been providing a lot of therapy sessions for free during this whole crisis going on with clients as well. But we talked about just the fact that business was not the way it was, and she got together flyers and started posting flyers in different neighborhoods for different days of the week. And then she was offering takeout meals for family style meals. So really just working on the creativity of each individual business and looking at how I can change my business model from what it was to kind of exist in this environment that we're in here. Some businesses, but for a lot of businesses, are able to figure out something to do to make you a little bit more viable, to get you through the period of time that we have to go through. So it's been a really interesting time. a challenging time at times, but again, I think we're all working hard, trying to get through it.
Thank you, Libby. Okay, so we're going to move forward. I'd love for us to next hear from Allison Linney, the founder, owner of Allison Partners. Allison, you've been around for a while and you've weathered some storms, and I'm certain you could bring some really good insight to the group. So why don't you come on ahead and speak?
Absolutely. So it's good to see all of you. And Allison Partners will be 20 years old this summer. And so right when I was getting started, I went through things post 9/11. And then the really hard one for me though was 2008 to 2010. I mean, that was when credit cards were maxed out. And some of you have heard me speak about this before. I learned that the IRS is actually a very compassionate bank. That if you are honest about your struggles to pay, and talk with them about your business goals and get on payment plans, they were the most reasonable creditor I had during that time. And I paid everything back, but they really put me on some reasonable plans. So things like that, really looking to who can help you, making sure, I mean, this time's a little bit different because there's so much being done to delay some payments collectively and things like that. But I learned, so I'm going to break mine into two things, sort of some of the nuts and bolts things that I learned, and then also what I think is really important right now, which is how to take care of ourselves in the ups and downs. But I learned you could keep your credit score pretty good as long as you weren't ever late on a payment and never less than a minimum payment, which I knew, but I had not struggled with that kind of thing beforehand. And so learning how to ask for help where I could get it. Some of you have heard me say I used to use my mother's credit card to check into a hotel. And that's a real sign of privilege right there, that I had a mother that could help me out in some tough times. So figuring out where you can cut, where you can't, and being able to talk about it. So having some honest conversations about what you can and can't do, where your flex is. So those are some of the things that come to me top of mind from a business standpoint. But I think right now, I work across almost every industry you can imagine. I also do a lot of work in healthcare. So I coach physicians in hospitals across the country, and I'm sort of seeing where everybody is, or at least my everybody's. I think one of the hardest things right now that I'm trying to help people with is how we pace ourselves for this. So on the one hand, I think it's incredible the people that are using this as an opportunity and turning things around. And man, I listened to Antwon and was like, I got to do some of that stuff, right? So like, don't underestimate that someone who's a 20-year business owner is looking to Antwon and others, so we're all in different places, right? But pacing ourselves is going to be pretty important for this. And taking care of ourselves, that's important for everyone. I am wrecked by the data that's coming back about how this is impacting African American communities and my godchildren. Sorry. Being comfortable with vulnerability like that, and knowing that we are all in different places, right? Of where we are on this, of where privilege is, of what happens. And one of the hardest things that we sometimes do to ourselves is not let ourselves feel our own pain. We are constantly putting our pain on a continuum where we're trying to say, well, I'm not as bad as a frontline health worker or someone who's in a domestic situation that's really difficult, or somehow we're always just sort of measuring our pain, comparing it to someone else's, organizing it. Do you all know what I'm talking about? Any head nods? Just kind of and what I tell people is, on the one hand, I think it's incredible to keep perspective about how good you have it and to find your silver linings when you can. My niece is enjoying not being around mean 13-year-old girls right now at school. So like, she's like, is it bad that I like this better because nobody's picking on me? I'm like, no, you grab your silver lining, sweetie, because when you don't get to go to camp this summer, that's going to be harder, you know? So like, claim your joy where you can, claim your silver linings, but then when you hurt, learning how to hold hurt, learning how to be with it, looking to past times when you've been in pain and how you grieved in a healthy way. There's some grief involved in this time. Learning how to take care of yourself. I'll send everyone in the chat an article. I never know exactly what's going to resonate with people on social media, but some of you have texted me about this. One of the articles that I posted was about how your job during this time is just to arrive. And the analogy that they use is about people who travel with small children on a plane. Anybody ever done that? Raise a hand. You ever taken a small child on a plane? Your job is just to not kill the child, have anyone else kill the child, right? I mean, kill, I don't use that word, but like, it's rough, right? Traveling with small children on a plane. And it talks a little bit about how maybe we're putting a little too much pressure on ourselves during this time to be incredibly productive, to lose weight, to start a new diet, to dial up our business. I mean, we've got to do all that. We've got to do what we've got to do to keep food on the table and take care of ourselves. But this enormous push to be great during this time might actually be putting some unnecessary pressure on us. And so I'll send you all the article. It helped some people, I think, this idea of how can we kind of level out our expectations of ourselves and each other. And so then also trying to turn to whatever you know takes care of you, and making sure that you make time for that. And so I think I'll stop there, but this idea of how we care for ourselves, this idea of mental health, there's some new money that the governor found yesterday, is putting out there for mental health. I've never been gladder that when my therapist of a couple years ago retired, that I found someone new before this. And I'm learning I kind of like phone therapy better than being in her office. Who knew? And therapy in many ways is a privilege, right? But there is access to it. There are resources, and you all may have read, we lost a physician who committed suicide, who was from here, or had a lot of family here in this area up in New York. And this is going to put a toll on us from a mental health standpoint, wherever we fall in the continuum and how we care for ourselves. So I'll stop there, but if anybody's not quite sure how you approach the wellness piece or the mental health, there's a lot of people on this call who'd be willing to talk to you about it. Kay, Paula are two coaches that come to mind for me. And I know many of you are good at this, but I'd be happy to talk to anyone. But how you care for yourself and how you pace yourself, that's actually on my mind more. And I'll say this is the last thing. I'm not sure I did it as well as I should have from 2008 to 2011.
So can I add something I'm going to add this, and then I want to segue and get back to Q in just a second. There is, and I'm finding this in more and more meetings and more Zoom meetings that I'm talking, there's an added pressure where there are individuals who are saying, I just want to get back to normal. And when I hear that, I want to get back to normal, what normal was. And my concern is that it won't be what it was, but there is this, it's very definitive. I hear people saying it, and this desire to be busy because busy says productive. I'm going to do this because it's going to get me back to my normal. And at the same time, I think the pressure becomes punitive. I'm feeling people bending over the weight of a manager's normal. And so, my hope is that everyone will advocate for themselves and speak to, when she says, well, what do you need to be safe? Safe is relative. That depends on where you want to put me. But to self-advocate and to be very transparent about what we need and not forget to take care of our needs. Put the oxygen on yourself first before you run out to help everyone else. So I just want to conclude by saying that I'm going to pass it over to Q because he's going to introduce Yolanda. But Q, before you do that, I see there's some comments in the box. Andrea, can you read? There's a couple more responses that I saw popped up that I think are really valuable.
Yes, ma'am. Let's see. Boonmi Collins says, in regards to resiliency, she is trying to be flexible and responsive in her services and making herself available to clients for quick turnaround projects as they try to quickly tackle responses to COVID-19. And I'll add that we, the chamber, became one of her clients. And we appreciate the quick work that she did for Project Rebound. And let's see, Sue Friedman says, 2 strategies. Her mother is 91 in skilled nursing community and one of the most vulnerable to COVID-19. Her mom has the most uplifting outlook, accepting of isolation and no visitors, being focused on helping others and being less work for the staff. Her mother shows her the way to see positive, and she admires and appreciates that. Sue also adds to seek out humor and music and children online, the flight attendant working from home. So many good outlets for laughter. Let me see. And that's it for now.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Kay. I'd like to take the opportunity to share my appreciation. Can you all hear me clearly now? Yes.
Much better. Yeah.
So I just appreciate the teamwork with us passing the baton like so, and then with my lovely wife right here showing the teamwork of using her headphones, so I can hear me clearly without wincing, right, Allison? But I really appreciate the points that you all have shared, Allison, and you injected another piece. Although this is a business session, but you injected a very important piece because, and Kay alluded to it as well, and it's the mental piece, because part of it, I think part of the opportunity for this is looking into self and learning something more about yourself. I know at the past, in 2007, 2008 crisis, it was painful, and really what it did for me as a business person, I became a new person. I became a new man. I got involved with more things. I realized that what I knew before I got to that point was not enough, and I needed to learn more. It sent me back to school. That's the reason why that crisis is what allowed me to attain a bachelor's in business, because I'm like, okay, I accept the pain. I accept that I don't know as much as I need to know. And now it's time to learn more and really get prepared for the next decade. So I see this as an opportunity for anyone. A lot of people are not going to survive. Their business is not going to survive this, but you're going to have to use that as an opportunity to understand finances more and understand how you prepare your business and really get a capital structure. Allison alluded to credit. And then utilizing Libby's services and really just talking about your finances and staying on top of those things. So it's an outstanding opportunity within the pain. And one of the questions I wanted to pose before I pass it on to Yolanda is anyone does anyone have an insight, Allison or Libby, because Antwon shared that he pivoted to using the online platform. But either of you, have you learned anything else new about yourself during this crisis? Or anything new about your business model during this crisis?
Yeah, one of the most important things, and in some ways it's been, it's counter to some of what you hear out there, is giving my clients space so I kind of look at it, I had a real intensity of time with people when they were like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with our construction site if the governor's going to do this? Like just a whole lot of like react in the first 2 weeks. I don't know if you all have figured this out or not, but we're kind of at the halfway point. If June 10th, anybody else figured that out? So, I mean, assuming that June 10th is a milestone that matters, that could be adjusted. We never know. But so sort of the first 2 weeks were sort of that big intensity. Some of my work dropped off, and I have always been someone that did not overly push my clients to schedule, to utilize me. And I actually think the fact that I was able to give them some space without being anxious about where'd you go and do you need me back, and you know, I got to do this and I got to do that. It's important for me to name, you know, I've got other people in my company, Rachel and Jeff and others who can generate revenue if I'm not, you know, so I want to be, you know, some of this is that let's be honest, it's a lot easier for me this time than it was the last time. So the main thing I can say is keep making it, because they get a little easier. It's my third one. And I don't know if that's helpful or not, but so there's something about pacing, not overwhelming everyone on every new business model and every new opportunity. And I'm not quite sure how that translates into everybody's different stage of business, but I've always been pretty good about being patient, but it's been incredibly important during this time to make sure that I wasn't trying to push people to move into new business models sooner than they were ready, and to really think about this as a marathon rather than a sprint. And so I'm still figuring that out. I don't claim to have the answer, but I've noticed that it's sort of, I've had to balance it as other people were like, drive, do, change business models, pivot. I've had to sort of find a way. I don't know. Anybody else know what I'm talking about there? It's so new for me. I can't claim to be expert about it. I can just say that I'm learning from it and trying to adjust.
Well, good. Thank you for sharing.
Quentin, for me, answering your question is something that I knew, but I think it's definitely gotten reinforced. My business is a people business, and I think all businesses have to realize that they're people businesses first. And so, although we do accounting, it's still, I've had to let that slide, and I've had to just sit and listen to people, listen to people's concerns, listen to people's fears, listen to people's doubts or so, and that's what they respect, and that's what they appreciate. And before I can even offer solutions or offer changes, or we can look at ways to make it work, we've got to have the ability to sit and listen to what the people's individual concerns, and that's different for each business that you work with. So I think probably that's the biggest thing for me coming out of it. And I think as a business owner, you know, you have your own issues and your own problems, but your clients' issues and problems are yours too. And to be able to adapt and to be able to work with them will help you in the long run.
Oh, that's a great insight. Thanks for sharing that, Libby. Antwon, do you have any other thing briefly before we move forward?
I think Allison said something that was super powerful, you know, like your mental health. You know, for me, and I think a lot of us was like, before this happened, you know, I go 200 miles an hour and I don't stop. I just go. And, you know, when the kids, you know, schools got canceled and the kids came home, you know, in the beginning, it was like, oh shit, kids are home, you know, like, oh, you know, like readjusting because my wife works from home. Right. But again, an opportunity presented itself. You know, what I realized is that, you know, I've been going so fast that I've missed out on so much time with my little guys. And there was, you know, they've grown so much in the last year. And, you know, there were so many like little things that, you know, we were disconnecting on. It's been an opportunity for me to find a common ground with my kids and do little things with them, like bike ride or, you know, play video games or, you know, go outside and fly a kite, just like these really little things. And not only that, it's given me an opportunity to be present. And I think that as a parent, a lot of the times, you know, you find yourself spending time with your kids and, you know, you're on your phone texting or you're thinking about work or you're thinking about what you got to do next. I can honestly say over the last, you know, few weeks, you know, I've really realized that I've missed out on a lot, and it's given me an opportunity to form some new habits. So, you know, from a mental state, it makes me feel really good to know that I have that alignment again with my guys. And, you know, I want to make sure I'm doing more of it, you know. So I think that from a mental state, you know, it's more than just you, you know, how are you interacting with the people around you and how are you adding value to them? And, you know, using this to kind of propel yourself in a new direction.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Definitely another nugget to add to the pot. Crisis, the word crisis, the Greek definition for it is decision. And as leaders, we all have to make decisions. And in crisis times, you have to make a decision that plots forward to the future. And so with that, I'll pass it on to Yolunda from New Hill Development Corporation. There's been a lot of, oh man, like tons and tons of emails regarding access to capital and EIDL and PPP and grants and loans. And there's a lot of things that have happened from the first time we talked about this until now. And there's decisions that need to truly be considered when pursuing these items. So Yolanda is going to share with us some updates, maybe some do's and don'ts on things that she's gleaned and the perspectives that she's gained. And after that, and by the way, we'll adjourn at 1:30. So we'll understand if anyone else has to step off. We got started a little late, but we're going to move till 1:30 because we want to make sure that we have a session for Q&A. So with that, Miss Harrell, the lovely Miss Harrell.
Good afternoon. It's really great to be able to talk with you all again today and to really get some wonderful inspiration from the other speakers here today and to get their insights and perspective. So part of what New Hill has been doing during this time is we have been continuing to work with individuals on their financials, working with individuals that are looking to put together a plan, that are trying to think through, okay, I was working, now I'm not working, and so how do I manage my resources now? And so our financial coach, Bernard, has been doing an awesome job with continuing that process, but also looking at developing different ways in how we engage with individuals during this time. And so what that allowed for me to do is to focus on not only our organization, but other organizations out there or individuals and small businesses that during this time are not necessarily going to see the funds that were put out there as a kind of a carrot of hope that folks might get a chance to participate in. But you know, some were going to see it and some weren't going to see it. So one of the questions that I have for the group today is who applied for the SBA loans, the PPP or the EIDL loans, and was actually able to get or receive the loans. That was one of the questions that I want to put into, and I see I see Allison's hand went up, and Antwon's hand went up, and the rest don't have their cameras on. So maybe if you can just reply in the chat box and let us know if you were able to receive loans, because that was one of the things that I think for a lot of folks at the onset was, oh, great, you know, this is, there's going to be this opportunity for me to make sure that I have enough resources to get through this period the way I need to and survive. And then the reality set in because the program wasn't quite figured out. You know, initially the paperwork that was, I'm sorry, there's B sign around my head. Initially the paperwork was pretty cumbersome, and then they decided to go through a simplified process after many people had already filled out the long forms, and then they went to a simplified process. And then there was this idea of you can get a $10,000 advance. And then even that changed for some people did get it. Some people it was, okay, now we're going to base it on the number of full-time employees. And so for a lot of small businesses that don't have these full-time employees that may be working with independent contractors, that became a challenge. And so it didn't prove to be the necessary rescue that we thought it was going to be for some of our small businesses. And so, you know, part of what I've been looking at is, okay, well, where are there other grant opportunities that may exist that may not necessarily be here, because we do have a limited amount of resources within our, you know, within what the city is offering or what CACF is offering or what the county may be offering, just making sure that I am doing our part to research what other grants are out there. So we put forth grant opportunities for small businesses from LISC. I've sent out to some of the other nonprofits in the area where there's a Southern consortium for Black and I guess for nonprofits that focus on Black women and Black girls. And so I sent out, you know, those grants to other individuals or other organizations that I knew focused on that, so that we could really start to think a little bit more broadly and not necessarily just look in our own community to find the necessary resources to be able to weather, you know, kind of weather this storm, but hopefully also to think about how do we do business differently in the future. One of the things that we've done at New Hill is had some individual conversations as well with some of the small businesses that were functioning as sole proprietors, but they did not have all the requirements in place to be able to participate in the grants that the city was putting forth, because they weren't a registered business with the city or registered business with the county. So that kind of excluded them there. And then also the PPP program had not fully been explained. If you are an independent contractor, how do you go about applying for that? And so part of it has just been kind of walking through that. I do have a document that I would like to share with the group. And I don't know if I can upload it in here or if I can just send it to Andrea and she can send it out. But that really, there's a financial group that has put together a whole process for, and it's a PowerPoint that shows you, if you are an independent contractor, how do you go about applying for the PPP now that it has been replenished. And so, you know, obviously the fact that the funds ran out very quickly, for some people was a surprise, for others it necessarily wasn't. And so there's a second opportunity, and what we'd love to be able to do is share information so that if you didn't get in the first round, that hopefully you can get in the second round. But ideally, we're going to have to think differently about how, if we don't get those resources, how do we still move forward as a business? And so one of the things that I hope that many of you who, if you haven't signed up to participate, right now, the chamber, all the departments of economic development with the city, the county, and the university have all come together to put together Project Rebound as an opportunity for us to think collectively and to talk collectively about where we are and how do we move forward and how do we get our economy in this region going again, because it is going to take a strategic effort for that. And we need to make sure that those of you that are participating, if you haven't signed up, that are participating on this call, please sign up. We need to make sure that we have diversity represented in those groups, in the various sectors, to make sure that it is not just one perspective, and not only just from a diversity from a standpoint of race, but diversity from a standpoint of business side and the types of businesses, so that we're not just thinking about it from one business perspective. So right now, there's a lot of activity going on, I think, within our area to try and address some of the shortfalls that may have come out of some of the government programs. I'm excited for all of those that were able to get the funds. However, one of the things for some people, and the document that I will share will also talk about the things that you need to keep in mind, is that, you know, the funds are designed to be for the next 8 weeks. We do know, however, that over these next 8 weeks, yes, our stay-at-home order may be lifted, but our social distancing order may not be or will not be. And so how does that challenge, what does that challenge mean to your business as you move forward? What is that going to mean for restaurants? What is that going to mean for hotels? What is that going to mean for event venues? What is that going to mean for, large businesses with large amounts of people in the office? How does that going to affect our ability to be able to get back on track? So we need to think about that. But also, one of the things that we need to definitely think about is, are you tracking how you're spending your resources? Because they did not say up front how it was going to be measured on the back end, and they're developing that. We know this was all very quick, and the government is doing its best to try to respond quickly, but we have to be very mindful as business leaders that we have to be able to demonstrate how we spent those resources, so that if your hopes is that most of your loan is going to be forgiven, you're going to have to be able to prove that you spent those funds exactly the way they were intended to be spent, so that it can be a forgivable loan and it doesn't turn into an actual loan. But if you know that there's a possibility that it may need to turn into an actual loan for your business, then you need to think about how are you going to put that as part of your business plan as you move forward from a financial perspective. It is a 1% loan if it does convert to a loan, but it will be a loan. And so just, those are some of the things that you want to keep in mind. And if you haven't talked to your CPA or your business manager or whoever it is that you lean on for financial support in terms of, just thinking things through, then if you receive those loans, you definitely want to be doing that right now, because you want to have that strategy in place so that when the time comes for repayment or for proof of forgiveness, that you have the necessary documentation in place to be able to do that, or at least have your strategy in place to know, okay, I know I'm going to take this as a loan and this is how I'm going to be able to repay this moving forward. So those are just some of the things that I wanted to kind of point out that we need to be mindful of. If you, I know a lot of us have participated in various Zoom calls and understanding the PPP and the EIDL loans. And I'm sure there's going to probably be a few more out there even now as the second wave of funding has come through. But one of the things I think personally that we need to be advocating for is startup funds. And that's because a lot of us are going to be restarting as businesses. And some of us have haven't ever started a business before. Some of us, may have come into a business that was already existing, and now we've got to put on our startup mode hat. And that may not have been a hat that we worn before. And so hopefully through Project Rebound, there's going to be a lot of things that we can potentially advocate for. And that, for me, I think is one of those things that we need to advocate for, because a lot of our businesses are not going to get these funds, and they're going to need help to be able to recover and get back, or to be able to pivot into something new.
Yolanda?
Yes, ma'am.
Real quick, one thing I've been told, this has been heartbreaking, because honestly, if I'd had a ton of clients on the first Friday, like April 3rd, Janie and I were able to knock it. It was getting in line first, probably, that made the biggest difference, and having an existing banking relationship. And it's just heartbreaking to me, because I'm not sure I could have pulled that off the last two times when I needed it more, right? Then, I need it, but because we have not let anyone go, and really trying to hold the line on that. But two things I've been told. One, don't give up. That just because it has gone badly so far, that there is a continued commitment to trying to get the systems worked out. Two, I sat on some pretty powerful calls with Senator Warner and Senator Kaine, where they made some pretty big promises. If I had not gotten it, I would be reaching out to them. As ridiculous as that feels, as much as it feels like you're just shooting into the dark, I would be calling their offices every day. And sort of registering it with a staffer and asking who might help me. And you won't be the only ones doing it, and you'll have to figure out when to let go. But I am told that it might still keep working out. I don't know what you've heard, Yolanda, but.
Well, I think to your point, Allison, yeah, absolutely. Definitely keep trying, but don't let that be the only thing that you're trying to do at this point is,
Absolutely.
I like, my best friend, she got a call. She said that she was approved for the PPP program, and then she got a call back and said that she wasn't. So,
Right.
That was very disheartening for her.
Yeah.
But I mean, she was also trying other things. So it was like, yeah, okay, it was disappointing, but I'm going to just pivot and I'm going to do some other things because she had multiple irons in the fire.
Right.
So, I think for a lot of us, it was a lot of great talk in the beginning. And I, again, excited for the folks that are able to take advantage of it, but also needing to be mindful of those who are not, and who those programs were not well designed for, especially businesses that have a lot of contract employees, or they are sole proprietors. They definitely were not well suited for those types of businesses. So there's still hope, to your point, Allison.
Well, and a couple of other things I did the last go around was I figured out, and this is going to sound bizarre, but I reached out for some personal loans from people. And it kind of feels like nobody has money right now in our networks because everybody's scared. And you have to be careful who you ask and how you do it. But some people helped me out in small ways and small portions. So I think figuring out how to brainstorm about what those options are. So and how you can stitch together a bunch of different choices. I mean, everyone told me that it was irresponsible that I used my credit cards, but I don't know what else I could have done if I didn't. And so I came up with a payment plan for how I would pay it back over time. And you have to be really careful. I'm not advocating that. But at one point I had to. I think there's also some unique opportunities around refinancing mortgages right now. And so, I don't want to get out of my wheelhouse financially. This is where call Libby and ask her what a consultation would cost. And I know there's others on the call as well that provide these services, but Alex, I know you can help, but like there are unique arrangements that you can possibly cobble together. And keep looking for those. But what makes me sad is, did you see which ones of us raised our hands that got it? I mean, all big organizations, all a little bit larger organizations. And, I only have 6 full-time employees, but I never had contractors. I've always had employees. And things like that, because that was just important to Rachel and me. But I didn't know it was going to make such a big difference now. But so the point is, everything Erica's been putting in the chat about who's been being left behind on this, it's pretty dramatic.
So one of the things, I think Sue had just put something in the chat, which is a great idea about starting a fund to help minority businesses. And that's a great short-term solution. But my problem is that this is a bigger problem. And we talk about businesses being unbanked, but it's not just unbanked. It's just the lack of knowledge, because there were banks that were supporting people that did not have banking relationships with them. So it's where you go to for your resources as far as where to go. So I think a more productive or just as productive thing is a resource bank for people, because anybody that called, whether they were a client or not, I could give them the information of where they needed to go and how to work through this process. And a lot of times as businesses, we're so struggling because we are trying to manage our finances that we don't develop a relationship with a bank, a relationship with a financial person. And that does not have to be a costly relationship. I meet with some people once a year to do check-ins or so, but because we have that relationship, then if there's something like this that goes on, I can still help them with what they need to do. So I think just having somebody, some sort of fractional support in your back corner, which means you're not having a monthly bill, or you're not having these incredibly high, CPA costs or so, it still serves the community. And I think more people need to be aware that that is an option and take advantage of those sort of things. Because I was able to get loans through from clients that I don't do regular payroll or regular bookkeeping for, just because of the relationship that we have, maybe from a tax purpose. And I had some people that I just met at meetings that called me, for advice where, I could send them in the right direction. So let's look at longer term solutions as well as just the short term fix for these problems.
And Libby, to your point, when I came, for what it's worth, because I have to keep believing every day we're going to figure out a new normal and we're going to learn from this and, all those things. One of the biggest things I learned post the last time was to build that relationship with a bank. I had one, but I had not been able to get, one of the worst things about banking is that you can't get the money you need until you're big enough to get the money you need. And it's awful. Like, it's just one of the most awful, awful things. But I put a ton of energy into that in 2012, 13, and 14. So tuck that away for the next go round.
Thank you, Libby. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Yolanda. Critical information. Thank you, Antwon. Very critical information. I think has been shared. I really, really hope that people have been taking notes, making notes on it. We want to get to the Q&A soon. We have a couple of announcements that we need to make. But two words that stuck out to me that's very important: relationships and advocacy. Those are two words that have really stood out to me as since we've been having this discussion. But before, I don't want to get into that because we don't have a lot of time. But I wanted to bring Alex in to see if he could share any insights on the experiences of the Latino community at this point.
Absolutely. Thank you, Quentin. Just from what we have been seeing through contacts, through calls with Latino small business owners, I can basically tell you that I do not know of any small Latino business owners that I know of personally who received a PPP loan. I know of some who were denied, and I know of some who didn't even know how to go through the process afterwards. And it was a matter of, we were reaching out to as many as we could, because we've been giving out that information for free with just Latinos that we know and having them come in and talk to us, or via Zoom and conference call talk to us. And there was just a lot that the program ended so quickly, and we were still reaching out, and then we heard back, oh no, I actually didn't get a chance to go do it, because when things, and part of it is just the challenge of the industries that they are often in. When you're in a food industry or construction or landscaping, you're trying to stay alive and it's a physical labor business. Sometimes the days just fly by and it's like, oh, I didn't even have a chance to think about that. I was just trying to keep my business afloat these past couple of weeks. So a lot of times it's a matter of really getting to Latino business owners very, very quickly. And sometimes it's a matter of putting a little pressure to say, you need to come in and do this with me. Because if you wait for the response, the time passes and it's too late. One challenge, and this sort of dovetails into a question actually that I had, that maybe Libby, Yolunda, Allison, one of you might know. One of the questions that was posed to me that I still haven't been able to get a clear answer on is whether you needed a social security number to get PPP or the EIDL loans, or whether merely having a tax identification number or a business EIN was sufficient. Because obviously a lot of Latinos do not have that SSN. What they have is a TIN. And that was a question asked to me by several accountants that work with Latinos, and the resources I had available to me, I was unable to find an answer for that at the time.
Sorry, I'm playing switcheroo here. I'm sorry, Alex, ask your question one more time.
Oh, certainly. For these PPP loans and the disaster recovery loans also by the SBA, do you need a social security number, or is it enough to have a TIN or an EIN?
No.
I'm sorry, someone else answered?
Hey, I'm sorry, it was me. You have to have a social.
Yeah, exactly.
Or has to have a social. So the EIN number works for the overall business portion, but when you go down and you're actually putting in the information for the owners, then you have to have a social.
Absolutely. None of the programs were designed for community members that did not have a social security number, just like the stimulus checks that were going out. They were not going to go out to those individuals, although they pay into our system. They were not going to receive those benefits, which is extremely unfortunate. So definitely some of the local resources is where we're going to need to really look to be able to provide some of that relief that is needed. I know with Habitat, one of the things that they did is they applied for a loan with CACF, not a loan, but a grant with CACF. And as a result, they were able to waive rents for Southwood community for a couple months, because they knew that they had a lot of community members that had TINs that were not going to receive stimulus checks or we're going to have a difficult time accessing funds as a result.
Thank you for that. That's very helpful, because that's been a question that's come up a lot. And I think with the Latino community in particular, what we tend to find is, and what I have consistently found through Forward Adelante, is it's often a matter of information rather than I would say than the funding itself. In other words, many Latinos don't even get to the point where they know where to go to get the fund. They don't even get to the point where they are denied funding. They just don't know how to get there in the first place, or they're distrustful of the means by which you would get there and the institutions that you would have to, go through to get there. So sometimes it's just a matter of, reaching out. I've been very much encouraging people to just reach out personally. So in other words, if you know a Latino, connect them with someone, because we may assume that they know, but sometimes they do not. I've been surprised by the people I have spoken to and talked about this with, and they didn't know that it was there. And I was like, I thought you would have known this. And no, it never occurred to me. And this is not just among Latinos. I mean, we have a lot of clients up in New York, New Jersey area that were in a similar position, and they're not Latino at all, but they have a similar issue where people you would expect to know do not always know. So sometimes it's just taking that initial step and saying, hey, we did it also with some of our clients up in New York. We have several really small businesses that are clients of ours. And rather than just assuming like that they knew, we said, you know what, I'm just going to send the email and say, did you hear about this opportunity? And so, lo and behold, every once in a while, you'll get 5 or 6 that come back, yes, I already applied, I did it. You'll get that one that says, I didn't even know that this was out there. Thank you for letting me know. So sometimes it's just a matter of reaching out, even if you think it's going to be redundant. Redundancy is not always a bad thing.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Alex. That's important. It actually exclamates the importance of networks and alliances, and really making sure that we are getting information to people, because sometimes it's just the lack of advocacy leads to the lack of information being to the people that need it most. So that's very, very important. Very important to be included in the conversation. We have about 13 minutes left. We want to really get into a little bit of Q&A. I'm sure there's a glare outside, so I can't really see, but I'm pretty sure that there are questions out there that we'll swing back to you, Alex. But first, I wanted to make a quick announcement, a couple of announcements of good news, because with all the unfortunate things and unfortunate realities that we're experiencing, we find it very, very pertinent to share good news. So the first bit of good news is that we wanted to congratulate a couple of members of the Minority Business Alliance. We partnered with Minority Business Alliance, partnered with United Way for the first inaugural Minority Business Enterprise Grant. There was a grant for, it was 2 $5,000 grants for any Minority Business Alliance member. And those 2 members, after the application process, was one of our panelists, Libby Edwards-Allbaugh. She won one, and then Julie from Voo Noodles also won the second one. So those are 2 $5,000 grants that came in very good handy for those businesses. So yeah.
Yeah, and
Virtual
I want
clap.
I want to say thank you to the Chamber and to the United Way Forward. We actually, this really had nothing to do with COVID, so it was all started before COVID, but we knew that we had to do some systems upgrades around the office and network upgrade. And so we applied for the grant for that, and that's going to enable us to move forward, because we probably wouldn't have been able to move forward because of COVID afterwards. So it's going to help us complete the project on as planned. So I want to say thank you to you guys for that. I appreciate it.
Absolutely awesome. We were so very excited because you know, the Minority Business Alliance really made it a priority going into 2020 to just relentlessly seek ways to create more value for the membership. How do we give our members more bang for their buck? And opportunities like this, and that we hope and look forward to growing those opportunities in the future, are going to be critical. The second piece of good news that I wanted to share before we get into Q&A is that the Minority Business Alliance got together, and we decided as an executive committee that we are going to launch a fund, and it's called the Minority Business Alliance Endurance Fund. And what we're doing is we are going to provide 3 separate $1,000 grants to minority business owners who are members of the Alliance. And so all those who are members that's on the call, you'll be getting an email. But after this call, this conference, we'll be sending out an email to our entire network for those for members to apply for the $1,000 grant. And we hope to get that out ASAP. But you'll have more information that comes out in the email after this call. So with that being said, I think that's might be another, yeah. So apply. I'm pointing to some of you guys out there, apply. Yeah, and share with other members of the community that you know are a member or who would like to become a member of the Alliance.
Hey,
So
Q.
with that, I'll pass it back to Alex.
Q, one question.
Andrea.
Erica Vixilia wants to know, are we taking donations for the grant?
We will. Yes, we will. But we will get in contact with her. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And thank you for having that mindset and that willingness, Erica. So yeah, we'll get in touch with you and work out the logistics for that. So Alex,
questions.
I think I see it's all a blur, but are there any questions for the panel?
I believe we have all comments right now. Feel free to go ahead and put your questions into the box. While you're doing that, I do want to read, I thought it was important for those who are listening by phone or cannot see the chat. I believe it was, let me make sure I say who it was, that Shauna shared information that there is a Verizon Small Business Recovery Fund in partnership with LISC grant, especially for entrepreneurs of color, women-owned businesses, and historically underserved communities. The deadline for that is today, April 28th, it looks like. So I would definitely encourage you, just look that up. There is a link there for those who are in the chat, but if you cannot see the chat, Verizon Small Business Recovery Fund. I'm sure if you Google that, it will take you to the right place.
And Alex, as an FYI, due
yes.
today is a very easy application. It's not anything complicated. So anybody that's interested, they will come back if you're a finalist and ask for additional information, but to initially get your name into that process, it's a very easy and quick to do. This is an FYI.
Thank you, Libby.
Did you want to share something?
Any other questions that we have here?
Okay. Oh yeah, so we were switching that because that's exactly what Yolunda was going to share. Yeah. So Alex, have you seen any other resilience comments worth sharing with the group?
Let's see. So while we wait other questions, Sue shared, as a small nonprofit, she has always seen bankers and towns insurance agents as important business relationships for the long term. Her insurance broker recommended insurance coverage possibilities during COVID-19. He reached out to them because they have a relationship. So just really important to have those.
Alex?
Yes, Andrea?
One more thing real quick. Anna left a message saying your loan fund is open until May 8th. Did we talk about that or did I miss it? With CIC?
We have not, yes. So let me go ahead and.
I know you have to do it 1:30.
CIC has business. I forget let me get the precise terminology for you. It's a business resiliency fund. I think Anna had to go.
She did.
But it's called the Business Recovery Fund. And I believe that does go until Friday, May 8th. It's a very simple process. If you go to cicbill.org, it's right there to click on the front page. These are, to be clear, these are loans up to $10,000 or 100% of prior year expenses. However, there's a 3-year repayment rate, 1%, and there's a 6-month grace period before payments begin.
Okay.
So this is an opportunity. I know that City of Charlottesville and Albemarle County have been excellent partners on this. The goal really is that part of the goal here is to reach out to entrepreneurs of color, women, minorities. That's where we want to make sure that people, if they need a loan really to get started again. And again, this is, keep in mind, this is to get started again once things begin to clear up. These opportunities are out there for you. So I believe that, let me just make sure. Even though the deadline is May 8th, be aware if you need there's 3 more days for you to get the necessary documents. So you can go ahead, apply, and if you need until May 11th to get documentation, that's available. Those extra 3 days are available to you. So I would definitely reach out to CIC. And to be honest, never hesitate to go to CIC, because even if you are not eligible for like the Business Recovery Fund or one of these others, I know the people at CIC, the staff there, they will help you to find the right resource for you. So even it's not a question of, oh, you're not eligible for this, goodbye. They will help and steer you in the right direction for what you are eligible for.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex, and thanks for bringing that up, Andrea. Very important, good people, to just leverage our relationships that we have with one another. There's tons of mental capacity on this call. Everybody on this call are members or supporters of the Minority Business Alliance, and that is of great value. You know, we're all about creating community wealth, and here's an example with all of us right here. Advocacy is, I like to push that again, we have to advocate. Andrea is the project manager for Project Rebound, but we have to find it, we have to find it pertinent for us to support her and really getting more minority businesses and minority business owners and professionals involved in the process so that we can advocate for one another. Because sometimes the lens is not there for other people to advocate for us. You know, it's just a natural cultural thing. So we have to get involved. Yeah, we're fighting bees out here. It's very important. Yes.
Just to interrupt for a moment, I wanted to also offer that, especially anyone who's on here, there's a lot of people who have phone numbers, so I'm not sure who they are, but I don't mind. If I put the article in the chat that I mentioned. I also welcome if anybody reads that article and finds it to be completely useless. Most people who know me well on this know I like negative feedback too. So let me know that. But in general, if I am very mindful of the overlap between coaching and counseling and sort of where the line is. And I know others on this who coach. I know Kay knows just what I'm talking about, Paula, we all. But if you're struggling with things relative to some of the core stuff, sleep, how to manage anxiety, any of the things that have to do with that. I'd be happy to have a phone call with anyone on here to talk with you about what resources are available. Not to claim that I'm the right person to help you with it, but to help you think through sort of a self-care plan. I do a lot around sleep hygiene and trying to help people reset sleep and figure out what to do if you wake up in the middle of the night. I don't know if you all have seen the research. This one's kind of tough for people because, like, if you're not in an exercise routine and everybody tells you to exercise, you're like, yeah, I know. But cardiovascular is actually COVID preventative. Some data's come out from UVA about that, and it doesn't have to be long or too intense to make a difference. So even if you can start really small. So anyway, Q, I just wanted, before people started signing off, to offer that just send me a message. And it's not that I necessarily would be the right person to help you, but I could help you think through resources for someone who could be supportive. And I'd like to offer that if it's useful to anyone.
Okay. We're going to turn it over to Kay to actually close the meeting. I think we lost Yolunda and Quentin. So Kay, if you have no other words, you can give the benediction.
Oh. No other words, but I'm glad their Wi-Fi lasted as long as it did.
I know.
Because they were concerned. I think all minds are clear. Thank you so much. There was so much information shared today. I think extremely useful. Andrea, I don't know if you'll be saving a copy of the minutes, but I think that we did that last time. I'm certain that the meeting will also be shared on Facebook in some form. If you want to go back, do it again. Please feel free to share it. It was shared multiple times last time, very beneficial. And lastly, if you need anything personally, professionally, and you can reach out to email, please feel free to do that. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you all again in June. We will not be meeting in May. I think that the date is June 23rd, and Andrea will get the topic out. Thank you to all our presenters and all of our folks attending. We appreciate you, and we hope that you'll go forth and prosper and be safe. All right. Take care. All right. Bye-bye.